today I'm here with Phoenix again. Welcome back to the channel, Phoenix.
Thank you.
It's good to have you back. And today we're going to talk about spiritual isolation. Isolation on the spiritual path for those of us who are really niche, who are into magic, into the occult, into various spiritual systems, and really how that eclectic nature doesn't appeal to most people. They want to have, okay, you believe this, this, and this always, and they're very solid in those beliefs, especially those people who are attached to religions. So we're kind of strange to most people because we have all these different things we've combined to make our own paths. And within the last few years, I've really considered myself a shaman more than anything because I kind of realized I was. But before we kind of dive into our methods, have you experienced this as well?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the Christian faith really hardcore, and that in itself it could be a fucking movie with the pain I experienced from that. But I always asked questions. That was never a good thing, or I'd be into meditation and visualization before I even knew what it was, in a sense or another. And I was kind of weird to most people, not only being homeschooled, but I was shunned for asking questions, for kind of taking from other things. And people don't even realize like Buddhism isn't really a religion, it's a philosophy, and they'd shut me down. They wouldn't let me talk about it, all kinds of stuff. So I was really, really shunned for that and for my beliefs and my kind of taking and asking questions. And I think it's not necessarily their fault. They're just doing what society's programmed them to do, whether it's Judaism, Christianity, um, Islam. And I'm not dogging on any of these, but not all of them are that way. A lot of them are actually very open-minded, and it'll be agree to disagree, but the vast majority are just so stuck in their ways, and you're kind of outcast, and
Yeah.
they see you as weird, but they don't realize how weird some of their fucking beliefs are, man. Like, seriously. Like, I find that interesting, but yeah, I think it's hard for me to really be me in a sense because I would come off as very weird. I joke about some of the stuff I do. I don't know if people know. I'm like half serious, like at work and stuff, but people kind of shun you in a sense. Not everyone's that way. Some people are growing to be more accepting, but you kind of get isolated, you know, for
Especially if
being
you're honest
different.
about it. Especially if you're
Yeah,
honest about it, because I found that I can't help but be honest about it now because it's like, okay, I'm not going to reject who I am just to satisfy somebody else's sensibilities. And you really start to see which people are going to reject the true you if you tell people about it, and which people are like, oh, I surprisingly this person is okay with the person that I am. So there is that decision that a lot of people make to say, okay, they're not. Most people like us, I think, will say, okay, I don't do this, and yeah, sure, I kind of believe in that. But for those of us who are completely honest about it, it's sometimes it can feel like a constant battle, and it's not always outright saying you're going to go to hell, which I've encountered very few times because people don't really fuck with me like that. But a lot of the time it's just kind of like brushing you off to the side, like, oh, he's weird, forget about him. I can't really get to know him, and that's why a lot of our spiritual practices really have to be practices. They have to be practiced consistently because if not, we're going to get caught up with not being developed in the sense that we want to be developed and having people judge us for being on that lower level. So we just have to dive in and constantly have these spiritual practices that we do, no matter how weird people think that we are. Because if I find myself not doing some kind of spiritual ritual or magic for a few days, I find myself embracing or feeling that I should be isolated more instead of realizing that I'm connected to everything else in ways that most people don't realize. And then that kind of makes up for a lot of the isolation. But are there any particular, before I get into what I would recommend, is there any particular spells or magical rituals that help you kind of solidify yourself and confidence and really make you feel like, okay, well, this is my path and this path is great? Or have you had any experiences like that?
yeah, meditation really helps. And I've been off and on, and like throughout the day, I just like shift my awareness, which is essentially meditation. Getting more back into that because I kind of fell off, but meditation and then the LBRP, Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, and people are like, that's banishing. Why would you recommend that? Well, it banishes any like astral residue or anything you might have picked up in your auric field, in my experience, from other people. And that really like solidifies that you are the divine. And that really works for me. That's all I can recommend now, other than just practicing sigil work or things you might do in your everyday, just to kind of boost that, or chakra work or whatever, you know. Reading books also really helps, or absorbing some kind of spiritual information in one way or another.
I would
YouTube or
say that
whatever.
since you were talking about sigils, I would recommend for everybody this book, Practical Sigil Magic by Frater UD. This is kind of what it looks like. If you look it up on Amazon, you'll be able to find it. But this is the best sigil book I've ever found. And it tells you basically how to make sigils and how to cast them, but also how to produce mantras from your sigils and having words of power from your own sigils that you've created. And you can really make a sigil for anything, to boost your confidence, to boost your strength, to gain knowledge, to have the ability to influence others, to help yourself align with the universe or a particular current. You can use sigils for anything. Really, it's really a simple process. And I have other videos where I talk about how to make sigils and stuff. But you can make them into mantras. You can keep them and use them as kind of a talisman, or you can cast them by burning them. This is a great practice for no matter how you feel isolated or you feel like producing a magical effort that night. You can use sigils for anything. So
I will say I've heard you can bury them, tear them, cast them to the wind, throw them in running water. Some people on YouTube recommended you could flush them down the toilet, and I didn't really think of it till now, but that could be basically desecrating it. I would recommend a creek or something like that, unless you want to get rid of someone and you want to kind of like do away with them. But yeah, I would say definitely. I haven't read that book yet, but your videos were some of the most solid ones I found on sigil work. I was
oh,
just pouring
thanks.
through them like a lot of this is the cookie cut bullshit, and then you went kind of deeper into it. And blood sigils, you're the only person I found with that video. Did you invent that? Is that something you made up?
No, that's actually something that I pieced together. I mean, he talks a little bit about it in this book, but when it comes to blood sigils, that's something that I got from Sorceress Cagliostro in her blood sorcery Bible. That's something that I got from this practical sigil magic. That's something that I got from kind of Nordic magic in general, blood runes and things like that. But like we said before, it's important that you only draw a little bit of blood if you're going to do it, and I wouldn't recommend it for anybody. I can't. But if you're going to do it right. So if you don't know how to do it, get the books that you need, research it, and I don't know, you can look at my video as well, to anybody who hasn't seen it. But it's something that has empowered my magic in a way that I never thought was possible. And it's so simple because you're using your own, as Cagliostro says, your own sacred elixir. Your blood is your sacred elixir, and you're basically using that as an extension of your willpower, extending that sacred elixir out into the world. It's like you have a bunch of arrows coming off of you where you're extending that willpower outside. So and the cool thing is if you use blood sigils to develop yourself within, and you kind of introduce it to your system. This is kind of a weird practice, but if you burn that sigil and then you have like a slight cut on your arm, you put the ashes in that, then you tie it off with a piece of fabric and just keep it there for a while, and then that sigil will circulate throughout your system. It's a combination of Vodou and kind of I would say Japanese magic in a way, because samurai used to actually write down prayers and then they burn them and they eat the ashes. So if you want it to be active within your system, it can be active within you regardless, but that's a method to do it. You can get it circulating throughout your system. That's what you can do that with oils as well, purifying your system. But yeah, no, blood magic has been something that people do not want to talk about, and it's something that I'm willing to talk about. And because honestly, it works if you know how to do it properly, and if you're safe about it, it works.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard people say you can just pop a zit and put on. I'm like, I don't want to put pus on there, like that could desecrate it. But like, like if you don't get pus, even that, I've had success with that. Like if you don't want to cut yourself, or you already have a cut that's bleeding or whatever, that can work. And as long as you're sterile and safe, no matter really how you do it, I've had a lot of success with it. And I don't care if people are scared to talk about it. I really don't give a shit. I'll tell people
Yeah,
about
me
it.
too. Yeah, I feel you there. There was another book that I'll talk about real quick is Talking to the Spirits, Personal Gnosis and Pagan Religion by Kinaz Filan and Raven Caldera. This book, if you do not have a connection to spirits or gods and you feel like you have more of a connection than other people, whoever's watching this, then this book, Talking to the Spirits by Kenneth Vlan and Raven Kaldera, that'll help you. This book, it helps you connect to spirits and gods in a way that it's very, you could say, cross path work, I guess. You're just combining different paths and whatever spirits you're working with, whatever gods you're working with, however you consider them, whatever you call them, and allowing you to learn from other people through this, because there's actually a bunch of quotes from other different pagans that work with different spiritual systems, and they talk about their experiences with spirits and gods, and really how to connect to their spirits and gods. So that's a really good book if you feel like, you're a shaman and you feel rejected in society and you feel like the gods and spirits are paying attention to you, you just don't know how to talk to them. I'd highly recommend that book. It'll give you a sense of connection that maybe people in society are not giving you, and you feel isolated. So you might want to try and more effectively reach out to gods and spirits. Now,
I will say this is the first I'm hearing of that book. If you can show it again, that'd be cool, because I don't know if it was in a dream, unconscious, out of body travel or something, but I've seen the artwork somewhere. So that is that's probably something I'll pour through for my channel. That is something interesting, and I wanted to say that live on camera because that happens every now and then, and this is the first I'm seeing of that book in this plane, but that's really interesting, actually.
I will say just a little bit more information on the authors. It's by Kenneth Vlan, is a great Vodou author that I love. That his book really helped me connect to the Vodou spirits. The Haitian Vodou Handbook by Kenneth Vlan. You can find it on Amazon pretty easily. But he's a really great Vodou author that really helps you bridge it to the West. And Kenneth Vlan is my favorite kind of Asatru Norse magic shamanistic author. And I found them both separately, and I was reading their stuff, and then I realized, they both made a book together. This is amazing. And then so they combine spirit work and God work and how to connect to them in this one book they actually wrote together. So yeah, those are just a few recommendations, because those are just really solid pieces of literature that aren't that expensive online, and you can find them on Amazon. I got them from Amazon. Do you ever use incense or sage when you feel like you're down and does it help you boost?
Oh yeah, frankincense, the guy who really helped me get into this and learn, other than just my YouTube work, he'd burn frankincense, not the sticks, like on the coal, high grade stuff. Definitely recommend that. And then sage for sure. I've used sage before I was even on this path, when I was more a spiritual Christian, is how I put it.
White sage, right?
White sage. I've started Dragon's Blood sage, man. That is something. It's something I found at a shop called Earthbound out here, and that I was using it for love magic and to also banish anything. And I used it for the LBRP instead of a wand or sword or my fingers. Dragon's Blood sage, man, and white sage, California sage.
I love Dragon's Blood incense, and so I might try to find that, because I've never even seen Dragon's Blood sage or like smudge stick, whatever. So I might.
You know what? I got an extra pack I'll actually send to you.
Oh, okay, sure, man. Appreciate it. I'm always, every single Dragon's Blood variant, resin or incense, it really enlivens the room, and it really just cleanses everything. Now I use frankincense daily. I have to burn at least like 2 of these a day. And what I'll do when I get home, I'll burn a frankincense incense stick, and then I'll rub some of the ash on my forehead, which people see constantly. But frankincense is just a good kind of like clearing the base. And I think when it comes to Dragon's Blood, you're kind of extending the base even further for your work, as far as my experience with Dragon's Blood. But when it comes to white sage, this stuff is very pungent. Everybody in your house has to be okay with burning this, because even if you burn in a room
the hard way.
and you open your room just a little bit and you close the door, that smoke will just go out, and they'll be like, what the hell is that smell? So this white sage, yeah. I burn it in my room constantly. Other people in my house do not care. But this really helps purify both my body, my emotions, my mental state. And it's like, if I've had a bad day where I didn't have good relations with people, blah, 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 I can burn some frankincense and white sage, and those negative emotions will just flow off. And that feeling of isolation will be well, maybe remedied in a way, because it feels like my body is vibrating at a higher frequency. My mind is at a higher frequency. Because a lot of the time, if you feel isolated, you feel like people are dragging you down. And astrally, spiritually, they kind of are if you let them affect you. Which, I'm not immune to letting people affect me. I mean, I'm not completely, I guess you could say, free from my ego. People still affect me when they bring me down. So and just like most people. So like these elements, and as well as what you're talking about, dragon blood, can really help you just clear the air for yourself. Now,
a couple more I'll recommend, if I may, is cinnamon. You can get cinnamon at the store and burn it on charcoal. That's what I do. Like ground fine cinnamon or whatever. And then mugwort. There's a Japanese and there's the other kind of mugwort. And you can also make a tea with this that induces crazy visuals, some closed eye. Like, it doesn't mess you up, but it's said to induce lucid dreaming and astral projection. And you can also burn that as an incense.
It's a cousin of absinthe, so it's kind of in the same family. When it comes to mugwort, it's like the Northern European version of sage. But yeah,
the Japanese have some kind of mugwort they would burn to keep off evil spirits. Like, there's the Japanese and there's the Northern, and both, I'd say, have similar effects. No disrespect to anyone who believes otherwise, but they're both pretty potent.
I've never tried the Japanese. I've never even heard of it, so I'd have to look that up. But I didn't know the Japanese has a mugwort. That's interesting, though. I mean, it's weird because Japanese mysticism is so hard to find books on. Shintoism. Shinto is something that I wanted to study because of the animism of it. I'm really into animism. The ancient Romans were in animism too. If you go back far enough, people believe that there are spirits for everything. And which is really true. We live in a fabric of spirits. But yeah, that's interesting. I have to look that up. Before I start talking about runes a little bit and how that can help, is there another kind of like thing you would recommend, like little thing?
No, not off the top of my head.
Okay, so if I've had a long day and I feel isolated, I might come home and I have these runes that I made myself that I've talked about before. But I'll just open the bag and I'll kind of reach in and I'll draw a rune. Now, despite common thinking, when you're drawing the runes, it doesn't have to be, if it's upside down, it's reversed. That's not really how runes were used. That's what I thought for a while, but then I realized through study that it's not really how they're used. But say, I drew Fehu. Yep, I drew Fehu. So that basically means mobile power, energy. The possessions that you have both in the physical world and the astral world. So talking about spiritual isolation, if I drew Fehu like I just did, which is kind of like an F goes like this, arms upward to the gods, then it really has to do with the potential that you have, but also what you possess. Using what you possess. In this case, it might be talking to me in the sense that, I have everything at my fingertips, so if I would just use it, I already possess what I need in order to move forward in reference to this particular topic. Now, Ansus, which is another rune, my favorite rune, right next to Uros anyway, is the arms downward, which is basically kind of evoking or invoking the gods, and that's very associated with Odin. Fehu is associated with Freyja, which is, honestly, today I did feel isolated, and I felt like I did want more connection to other people. So Fehu is a really good one to draw. But if you do that, and then you can work with one rune, do one rune a day, and really think about it, meditate on it. Or you can do a whole spread of runes, 3 runes, a whole cross of runes, or you can do a whole layout. There's various ways you can lay out runes. Have you ever tried, like, has there ever been something wrong with you and you wanted to divine what was wrong with you? How would you recommend doing something like figuring out what's wrong with you, like divination or anything like that?
I meditate, really, because I'm a clairvoyant, and sometimes I just hear, and I'm still learning to use it, and I'm still coming to realization that I am that, but guides, my higher self or something will tell me what's wrong. Sometimes I hear just wandering stuff, or it's just my mind or whatever, but normally I can figure it out just by meditating or focusing or calming down and just really, thinking on it. I have a pendulum. Sometimes I'll ask, And if I'm feeling like I really can't get out of this like state and I can't divine it with myself, I don't have a tarot deck, but I'll have a friend do a tarot reading or something like that.
Yeah, and the little bit of tarot that I've done has been successful, but I've always been most successful with runes. But yeah, when you're in meditation, like you're talking about, you cut yourself off from the emotional impact of that pain you're feeling at the time. It allows you to really deal with, to see past the emotions if you do it properly, and to really figure out what is the root of all the problems that you're dealing with. What is the root of your feeling of isolation? What is your root what is the root of whatever problem you're having with the people that you know or the people around you? It really it isolates you and allows you to really focus on yourself, and that's really where the root of everything is.
Right.
Paramahansa Yogananda used to say, center everywhere, circumference nowhere. So you can be centered within yourself anywhere. It's not about what's happening around you. So if you cut off the negative emotional effect your emotions have on you, or you start to deal with your mental problems or the ideas that you're focusing on through understanding them through meditation, that can be a great aid to anything you're trying to do, especially if you feel isolated.
One thing I do want to say is it's not necessarily about cutting off or stopping the emotion. If I embrace
it, for me it is, but for a lot of people it isn't.
It both can work. Sometimes I have to really embrace it and feel it and let it pass. And then, like, after I let it calm down, I don't focus on it too much. I just accept that it's there. And after I do that, or I feel into that, I can kind of like circulate around or figure out what's going on, or it'll just pass. And then the knowledge comes to me, kind of like a light bulb goes off my head. Oh, okay. Or I'm just stressed about this, and that's kind of making me stressed about everything. Stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely, man. There is a whole different school of really embracing emotions. There's actually two different Buddhist forms of doing this as well that I've studied. But anyway, before we stop the video and we'll just keep on talking, do you have any inspiration to give to people who feel isolated? And then I'll give mine afterwards. But you have any inspiration to give to somebody who doesn't feel like there's anybody spiritual around them and they're constantly stuck with people who are very religious or people who don't believe in it at all? Any advice based on your life that you would give?
You'll get through that. That's one thing I want to say. I got through that. Like I had friends who were spiritually open-minded, but they didn't really grasp what I'm saying. They were there. They were good Christians or atheists, and they would actually listen and care, and we could kind of get through things. But through casting, just with my mind, not always tools, but just having faith and believing and setting the intent, the spiritual people will come into my life, calling on the divine, asking God, whatever you want to call it. They've came without fail, using sigils, whatever. They've came. You're not going to be stuck there forever. Cast for it, do whatever means, and just have faith. When that doubt creeps in, accept that doubt, but just have faith, because that's not forever. I've been there. I was there for years, and I was still discovering what I believed. And then after that, it was like a while, and I met a couple good buddies I have now, and I found them. You're not going to be stuck in a place where you're always, cut off from spiritual people. Just cast them or do whatever. You'll find them. We're out there. It's not as a small percentage of people as people think. More and more people are becoming more spiritual every day.
That's definitely true, and I would definitely second that. Because we can't give up on who we are, and a lot of the time, people who become religious, they have stuffed themselves inside of a box, and they start to forget that they were open to other ideas, or that they were really interested or really had talent in other spiritual methods. But because they felt the pressure to be in this box, they just put themselves there, and they forget that they're even in that box. So I would also recommend that always try to see the seams of reality and the seams of your world. Where do you think you are confined in between your job, your home, what you do for fun? And always try to push those boundaries into, sometimes it's scary to push our spiritual boundaries, but always push those boundaries a little bit further. Try to take in more knowledge and more information little bit by little bit. And before you know it, your world is much vaster. And, eventually your world would be the entire multiverse, no matter where you are. So just push those boundaries, and don't give up hope. Like you said, that those are our recommendations, I suppose. But anyway, hey, thank you very much for talking to me today and seeing you on the channel, Phoenix. And I hope all of you, find yourselves. Do not be afraid of who you are, and I will see all of you on my channel in the future.